Hi, hello, everybody. What we got going on today is we're going to be talking about our two other ancient civilizations. The first thing that makes these different to our Aryans or Harappans from yesterday is that both of these groups are going to expand to such an extent that they create empires. So, the idea of having a central government and then conquering more and more territories until they expand over a huge amount of area. If you look at the map right down below, an interesting thing right off the bat is the fact that these two different empires are going to be established very much in the same exact location, but with lots of time in between. Again, our Mauryans, which is how I'm going to say that, though I don't know if it's correct, they are going to be established in 260 BC, so very long ago. And then the Guptas are going to be after the turn, and they'll be 400 AD, or in looking at the Common Era. So you've got this sort of gap between, but really the picture that they create is very similar overall, where you can see these items or where these two empires established. So we're going to talk about each of them. And then at the end of the PowerPoint, I've just got work to be completed. As a reminder, you should have gotten some good work done yesterday. Hopefully, this will allow you to be able to finish things up and move forward here. So, our Marianne and our Mauryan empire is going to be established because Western India started to come under threat of outside invaders. This is where again, Alexander the Great Empire is going to be stopped. Remember that he created an empire that spanned all the way up to India. And this is going to be the group that comes to meet Alexander the Great and to stop him, basically be like, hey, you are not going to move any further east. We're going to stop you right here. And that's exactly what they did. Of course, knowing that Alexander the Great passed away shortly after that, a failed again conquering of India. So in the wake of this process, they're going to create an empire, a group of different, what were smaller nations, all coming under the control of one larger, more powerful one. And this empire is going to be, again, well done, I suppose, as the first in Indian history. It is something that, and they're kind of working off of no model, so they're just trying to make it work, and they create a very highly centralized empire. The empire itself is, again, divided into provinces that each have a ruler. Again, they're called governors. There's a very large army in this empire to help kind of control things and to keep people in line. There's also a secret police. And the reason there's a secret police is that the very first emperor of this empire overall was highly paranoid. He was very worried he was going to be assassinated like all the time. So it's a kind of it's an interesting story, I suppose. Not necessarily one you have to take down into your notes, but as the first emperor, he was just so worried about being taken out that he had all his food tasted in his presence before he would eat it, and he never slept in the same bed 2 nights in a row because he wanted to keep people unsure of where he was, so they couldn't kill him in his sleep. This sort of hyper paranoid leader does again create a fairly stable empire overall. When he does eventually get taken out, the next leader, and probably someone who is considered the most important or the greatest as far as accomplishment goes, leader in Indian history, of the whole history of India, is going to be the next Mauryan emperor, which is Osaka. Osaka is going to be a very young man when he takes control, and he is someone who is very much, how to best describe him, I suppose. He ultimately is going to be a really important leader, not just because he makes good decisions, but because he is motivated by really, yes, thoughtful ideas. Osaka is going to convert to Buddhism early on in his life, and we're going to talk a lot about Buddhism and Hinduism. Next, it's the next learning objective, and it's going to guide his rule. And he creates an empire that is not just powerful, but also compassionate. He's a very smart individual, a very gifted leader, and he'll set up hospitals and he'll plant trees. He builds shelters for those who can't afford to build them for themselves. And he's just a really well respected leader in the history of India as well. Besides being a really thoughtful and compassionate ruler, he also is very smart and understands what it takes to be successful as an empire. And a lot of that comes through economics. The Mauryan Empire is going to establish India as an important ruler of the Silk Road, which we have talked about a few times throughout history, as it cuts through a lot of the different places that we've discussed so far. But the trade network is going to expand even more so under his control, it is his rule. And it's going to not just be the land Silk Road, the physical road that connects the east to the west, that the Indians are going to have a control piece of, but also all of the ocean routes as well, because they have a huge coastline. They're able to have ports and different things that keep them connected. Unfortunately, after Osaka dies, it does leave a bit of a power vacuum, so it all kind of falls apart. And it left them vulnerable again and broken into small provinces, individually ruled or controlled by governors, people who thought that they could do it better than, again, the new leader who takes over after him. And ultimately, the Mauryan Empire is going to go away. Before we talk about who replaces them, who comes up behind, just a quick visual. Again, this is a good map to look at the Silk Road and the process of sort of how this whole thing plays out here. Of course, the most important Silk Roads that we're concerned with are the ones that come down into the subcontinent of India. The physical land routes are tricky because the Himalayas create such a large boundary, but people are going to use the Indus and the Ganges to be able to come into India and tap into those civilizations that we've been talking about. The most important, of course, is going to be those purple lines on there, the sea routes, which guarantee that India is going to play a large role in the process of trading from east to west and west to east, as people who are going to sail are going to stop in India multiple times and be able to get to China, get to the east, which is the ultimate goal in connection here with this Silk Road as it's been created. So after our Mauryans go away, we've got the Guptas. The Guptas are going to establish in the Ganges River Valley, and they'll end up controlling more land, the Mauryans, the same plus extra, I guess is one way of looking at it. The nice thing about the Guptas as opposed to the Mauryans is that they have a series of really effective emperors as opposed to just one really, really great one. Because the leadership is really consistent and stable, it creates kind of a golden age of Indian culture. Both Hindu and Buddhist art flourish. And remember, we're going to talk about those two religions again coming up next. The society that is established in the Gupta Empire serves as kind of the model of what all Indian societies try to be as they go forward. They're going to see here that under the Gupta Empire, again, foreign and domestic trade is going to flourish. There's a lot more connections, a lot more protection. People feel safe being able to trade under the Guptas. Another thing is that by the time the Guptas take control in 400 AD, the religious impact on trade is going to be expanded. Again, the Hindu and Buddhist faith are two that are going to move outward, and it draws a lot of people back to India. Pilgrims are coming to visit a lot of the major religious centers, the places where Buddha lived, where Hinduism was began. Excuse me, cities are going to pop up around temples, and then shrines and temples are built to keep bringing people back. It's tourism. We're seeing some ancient tourism right here. Most ancient tourism was all about religion. And the Guptas recognized the propaganda ability to use it to get people coming and buying things in India and bringing them back again and again. As far as again, where the Guptas come and go, they do go. Like many others, they are going to be invaded by the Huns of Central Asia. The Huns are a group that we have briefly talked about before when we discussed the Middle East. They popped up a little bit, but only briefly. And it led to the decline of the Gupta Empire. Northern India is going to remain divided for hundreds of years after this. It was similar to the Mauryan empire. They broke it into smaller pieces to help control it, and those small pieces are going to remain divided and fighting for a really long time. Before we sign off on the Guptas entirely, there's some other accomplishments I want to draw your attention to. Like I said, this is a golden age in Indian history. And whenever we have one of these golden ages, as we've encountered thus far, it's a time when people feel safe and it's prosperous. So that means that culture is going to flourish. So a lot of the Indian culture that is, again, even still around today, is going to get start here in the under the Gupta control. Again, the famous literature of Indian history, most of it is going to be connected to the Vedas, which we talked about already with the caste system. It's the first written language of the Aryans, putting together religious chants and stories. Remember, the caste system is that social division of where people fit, what social class they're going to be in. We've got the longest poem ever written in any language is going to be written during the Gupta time period. It's written in Sanskrit, the original language, again, established by the Aryan people. As far as architecture goes, the architecture is all going to be connected back to the religious structures of the time, and there's a lot of pillars in Indian architecture. The stupa is going to be the, I guess, specific religious building that you'll see dotted along the landscape of India, rock chambers, things like that. The Indian people under the Gupta time period also in a lot of big science and math, I guess, expansion on ideas that are happening because the Silk Road connects the Middle East to India. There's a lot of overlap of things we talked about before. So, seeing in astronomy that they're charting the movement of the stars, they figured out the Earth was round, it rotates on its axis around the sun. Math, they're using algebra, again, use of zero. The symbol zero is actually a Sanskrit symbol. That's something that the Guptas contribute to the world's math, I suppose. The Arabs also, again, the Arab adopted systems after they conquer the territory and they spread them west. So that's, again, they're seeing this initial contact, and the next group that comes into India is going to steamroll a lot of this and take things back with them. The Arab people are coming, I guess, is one way to describe the next thing that's going to happen to the people of India, besides religion. So that's it for notes. You can put your notebooks away. All I've got left to talk about is work to be completed. So now that we've talked about all four of our different civilizations, you should have enough to go on to complete your spec table, which is on Classroom. It's due by the end of the week. So again, not today by 3, but tomorrow, and Friday the 3rd. You should keep checking Classroom. I'll have reminders up there for you and letting you know about other stuff that's coming up. Don't forget that, again, I'm not doing any formal checks on your study aid, but you should still be working on it periodically. Now, by this point, we have covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total of the key terms that you could definitely get done and finished with on your study aid, so you don't have to try and do all of it at the last second, which of course is no good anyways. You have until April 24th to complete that study aid, which is a long time, but it has spring break in there, and I don't assign anything over spring break. So get it done early, get it